What time is it right now? Like 9:02? Should we give it to 9:05?
Yeah, let's give about 2-3 minutes.
Okay.
Well, Margaret and Madi, where are you from? Are you Treasure Valley or other area of the state?
Yeah, I live in Nampa.
Oh, hey. Sorry, I live in Meridian, but Nampa is my home.
Yeah, we're pretty close.
Adrienne and I live in Nampa. Yeah.
I live in Genesee, Iowa.
Awesome.
Genesee, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Beautiful area.
It is beautiful. That's why I don't have a picture, because of where I'm at. If you want to hear me talk, you can't see me.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm just going to close my eyes and imagine the beauty. That is you and your environment, by the way, both.
Well, I'm going to email Taryn real quickly and just make sure. And maybe we just will roll with the 6 of us. And yeah, let me check with, I think it was Lori who sent me. Oh. We should have somebody else join. We have 8 now. Hi, Amanda. Hi, Callie.
Yes, hello, good morning.
Oh, I'm also wondering if maybe some thought that it was because there was the little work session right before and it says 9:15, so maybe that's...
Oh, okay. We'll wait then. Because now we're starting to get people in.
Just barely noticed that now. I just look back and you're all very small all of a sudden already.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense. So we'll wait. Okay, we're up to 27. We had 6 about a minute ago, so that must, I think Adrienne's come out. Good morning, everybody. We're gonna just give it a few minutes, let people start coming in. Hi, Tiffany. Hi, Vicki. I see 2 of my colleagues on there.
Hi, Jean.
Hello.
Hello, glad to be here.
Good to see your names and hear your voices.
Awesome. I see Jack.
Is Jack there and on? Hi, Jack. Well, now we know that Jack's in here. He's getting called on a lot.
Yeah.
Be ready, Jack.
Heck no, you're the presenter.
Oh, we can include other people.
Okay, I think
They told us a 9 o'clock start. You guys have 9:15. I think, Adrienne, you might be right. So we'll just give it a few. So Shannon, should we give it till 9:15-ish? Or
yeah.
Adrienne, is that what time you said you see it starting? On your end? Because we had maybe had something different with presenters. Okay. Where's Sean when we need him? Good morning. Maybe Sean can play us a little ukulele again. A little wait music.
You had to be the early attendee to hear that was the reward for being early.
Yeah.
That was so relaxing.
That was awesome. I like that. For once in my life, I was early.
That's a nice way to start, right?
Yeah.
Jennifer just said they just wrapped this
Can
session.
you hear me?
Yes. Good morning, Richard. We can hear you.
You're there. Good. Is Shannon there also?
You're a little broken up. It's a little choppy. Still a little broken.
And Jennifer, thanks for the note. Yeah, they just wrapped up the welcome and told everyone to get to the breakout sessions. So that's why we have folks rolling in now.
Okay. Richard, how's your audio now?
not too sure what I got going here.
Can't. Yeah.
I'm the person who's supposed to introduce you today. So, can you hear me all?
It's really broken and choppy for us, so we can see you smile, but we can't hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Other than,
Gosh. Well, let me see how I can figure out how to make this.
If you turn your volume down just a tiny bit, you'll have less squelch, and that should help, plus speak a little slower.
And Jean, the other option that the tech person mentioned was the bandwidth might be conflicting between the computer and such. So if he wanted to join the audio by cell phone, might help the chattering too.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Richard, they're suggesting you perhaps join the audio on your cell phone, and then
Can you hear me now?
it's still really broken.
Not too sure how to solve that yet.
As is it?
Here, so, full screen chat. Let me look at the speaker stuff again.
Yeah, Richard, where it has the little mute microphone down in the lower left corner, you can click on the up arrow, and where it says you can switch to phone audio, so you'll be able to.
Worked good earlier, but I don't know what's the problem is now.
And then try turning off your video. It might help with the audio off your video.
It
Thanks
says
for
I
that
got
suggestion.
a quality problem, yeah.
Okay. Well, shall we go ahead and kick off? Or you chat, maybe if you wanted to chat, that will work as well.
Yeah, if you want to type in the chat rather than use audio. So Shannon, they were saying that we had a 9 o'clock, and that might have been for us to just be in early for an audio check. They have 9:15 start.
So then we should start at 9:15.
Yeah. We thought 9, but here we were all ready to go testing at 8:35. We're like, why can't we get in? Good thing for us to be early.
Mine was working earlier. I was working earlier, it sounded good, but now I have no idea what the problem is.
Richard, if you unhook your, do you have any a headset on? Do you have headphones on or earbuds?
Yes, I do.
Maybe try to unhook those to your computer and see if it clears up.
I can't hear anything now myself.
You sound a little bit better. I heard you say I can't hear anything now myself, and that's the first I've been able to make out what you said. So if it isn't if it won't resolve before we get going, you can just we'll just watch the chat box for you for any comments you need to make.
That Richard was supposed to introduce you both. Is that correct, Richard?
And now it seems like his screen is frozen.
I can do that if we need to switch.
I'm afraid we might be suffering from internet connection problems in more rural areas of Idaho. So Brenda, if you want to take the lead, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Now I have to find what I'm going to do.
Not very well, Richard. Still, unfortunately.
Man, that's just ridiculous. Well, first of all, I know you can't hear me well at all, but go ahead and start on your cue. I do want to welcome you and everybody else to this session as session 1C with Jean and Shannon. And I'm going to turn it over to them because they can. Their volume.
Why don't you?
Probably much better than mine.
Why don't you introduce yourselves, and that may be the best way to do this right now.
Okay, thank you. And Shannon, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, now I get it. I get, Richard was trying to introduce us this whole time.
Yeah.
Okay, that helps. Yeah, Jean, why don't you go first and then I'll follow.
Okay, thanks. Good morning. My name's Jean Mutchie and I am Community Health Manager at St. Luke's Health System is my day job. All of this fortunately gets to weave into work that I get to do at work, but then it's also clearly heart and passion work, as you'll hear today. And I also am on Nampa City Council, so the intersection of practice, policy, all of those things, and the intersectionality of all of that is really important to me. And I'm really excited to have all of you here with us today. And hopefully something we say today will spark positivity, bring hope, and help you become the activator in your community that you all can be. Shannon.
Thanks, Jean, and hello. Good morning, everyone. I'm Shannon McGuire with Spark. We work with leaders to build vibrant communities across Idaho. My role is to serve as strategist and facilitator to help take those big ideas and crystallize them. Humbled and fortunate to have been involved with this initiative that you'll hear about today. So as Jean mentioned, it's about helping you hopefully maybe change perspective a little bit, understand the work that's happening right here in our communities, and figuring out a way that we might be able to help you as well, if any of this resonates with you. So to get us kicked off, if you like to utilize chat, just to say, or even emojis, how are you? We don't ask you that from a place of, you're going through the grocery store line and you're checking out and they're like, how are you? And good, good. Want you to really take a moment to center yourself and think about how you are. And the faces here are a wide range, right? I would tell you more in the pink face. That's how I roll on most days. And there's nothing wrong if you're a bit of a red or blue face. I just want you to think about your thoughts, your emotions, and your feelings as we start our day. And I also wanted to bring this slide in because we'll go on a little bit of a roller coaster here. We'll probably go through a range of these emotions. And so I want you to think about how you prefer to feel, And as we go through the ups, downs, the anger, the sadness, I want you to hold on to whatever brings you joy. And our job today is to help infuse some of that positivity, optimism, wonder, and hope. So I want you to anchor yourself in acknowledging how you feel now and how you want to feel, because we're going to go through some emotions here today.
And please know, as disclaimer, we know oftentimes that helpers have been hurt. That's why we tend to enter into this work with our whole hearts, our whole minds. And some of the stuff we're going to talk about today is hard. And if it gets you uncomfortable, if you're starting to feel uncomfortable, please reach out to somebody. Make sure that you debrief. We're going to end really high on hope, but we also know that many of you, this could bring up some past hurts. And so we really want to make sure that you have a place to anchor and somebody to anchor to. So please speak up, speak out, and ask for help. So Shannon, back to you.
Thanks, Jean. So we'll kick off with a video.
kid used to think. If I could just grow up. If I could just get through. I could leave all this behind. But that's not how it works. Everything that happened, it's still part of me. But there's hope. I learned how to heal from toxic stress and make sure the cycle ends with me.
Learn more about toxic stress and how you can stop it at stresshealth.org.
Breathe. A moment there. We all have baggage, one way or another. We're carrying something with us. And collectively right now, think about our year so far. I think we can all agree that this has been a very chaotic year. We have seen a wide variety of challenges to us, each individually, collectively, our families, our communities, our state, our regions, our country, our continents, our world has been rocked. I don't know of any other time that exists where we collectively have gone through something so traumatic and crazy, where we can actually talk about it with others across the world. With social media and the internet, we're able to reach out and be reached, and there's no shortage of challenges that we face. We think about everything that we're going through and think of it through the lens of what our kiddos are going through as well. Changes things a bit, right? And so to get a tiny bit personal, for me, my 2020 was 92. So I grew up in California. I grew up in South Central, one street over from Watts, during the 80s and 90s, where we had high violent crime. We had gangs. We had an infestation of just negative toxicity. And I lost my brother. We moved several times. You know, the typical at-risk, you know, low poverty youth. And I think about our kiddos today and how my past, elements of my past, is their present. And I anchor myself in that because I think about, wow, I can empathize and have extreme compassion for our kiddos and what they're going through today, because their 2020 was my 92. And we didn't have, growing up, a way to frame what we went through. It was just life. That's the best way I could put it. It was just like, you're dealt the cards that you have and you just deal with it. And as I have gotten involved with this work, I have become, I dare to say, euphoric even with what studies are showcasing now and the definitions that we have to describe what I went through. So ACEs, when I first learned about ACEs, first thing I said was, holy, I have a way to talk about some of the things that I went through. And that was the start of my hope. So I like to kick it to my partner, Jean, to take us through the next few slides.
Thank you, Shannon, and thank you for bringing your authentic self to this and sharing part of your story. And I think we can all collectively agree we're having a really intense shared trauma in 2020. Shannon and I, as we've been preparing for this presentation, we've said, in what year could we collectively remember a pandemic in our area, an earthquake that we felt? Not only are we feeling emotionally shaken, but then we were physically shaken. A really contentious presidential election season, a pandemic where, you know, science is real, science is not real, fake, hoax. Our kids' heads must be spinning if ours are spinning. And so we want to contextualize for you what some Idaho data looks like. And remembering yesterday that when Dr. Sege spoke, many of you already said you had pretty in-depth knowledge of adverse childhood experiences. And so we're going to kind of go through this relatively quickly, but we'll spend a little bit more time on what our Idaho data show us, and then we're going to start a deep dive into hope. So as you heard yesterday, ACEs really were discovered when there was a large-scale obesity clinic being run through Kaiser Permanente. And what one of the physicians continued to notice was that people would do really well while they were in the program, but then once they exited the program, they would gain all the weight back, and oftentimes, as we know with obesity, more. So he really wanted to understand better what is happening and what is causing people to begin to do really well when they've got the support of a program, and then again, fall back into what was considered old habits. So he was going through a battery of questions with one of the participants who had, again, regained a lot of weight. And what they were really able to understand was that she had been sexually abused early by a family member. And that started sort of this journey of weight as protection. Weight is a protective factor. And so we know with ACEs, we have protective factors, buffering, all of these different things. And so she was using weight. So he said, I got to look a little bit more deeply at this. So again, as you heard yesterday, a large cohort study, and mostly predominantly people who are Caucasian, middle-aged, insured, because they were all in a health maintenance organization at Kaiser. And so you can see 57 years was the average. So look at the baggage that people were carrying with them for decades. So really about the things that happened to them, people were saying for decades, here's what's wrong with you. So as you heard yesterday too, adverse childhood experiences from that study with the CDC and Kaiser were really put into 3 categories: abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. So as you saw in the video with the little boy, he was subject to a lot of what we consider traditional ACEs. But I think what we also see in our community is clearly this list is not exhaustive. These are not the only things that cause toxic stress or trauma for children. Think about the kids who face ongoing housing insecurity, food insecurity, a lot of those other things that add to their feelings of stress. And then there are pretty significant behavioral impacts of ACEs. And so what I'd really like you to think about today too is think about this from a child's perspective, and that what they might start to use as coping mechanisms. So if you look here, the more ACEs you have, the more likely you are to consider yourself an alcoholic. You're more likely to smoke, more likely to have used substances to cope again, and more often missing work. So again, it affects employment, and really, it can really impact all facets of our daily life. So here are some things that I think when we get out into the general public, many of you are really well versed in this, so this won't be a surprise to you, but you start to talk about the health consequences of unmitigated toxic stress, or ACEs, and people say, but those are health conditions. And so I ask you to think, when you are really, really stressed, are you at your best? Do you start to feel the physical or the emotional ramifications of unmitigated stress? So if you're a child who you don't know where you're going to sleep, you're like that little boy experiencing violence in the home, trying to protect your mom, cleaning up the substances from your dad's night before, that always breaks my heart to see him flinch in the bathtub, right? Like one of those things where children, you usually see them playing with toys or singing in the bathtub, and he's so tense and just waiting for the sounds. So that childhood memory for him would have been marred by a whole different experience that caused him to even find a bath very stressful. Because I know a lot of us will say, I'm just going to go take a bath and check out. There was no checking out for him when he was sitting in a tub. So again, folks who've had 4 or more ACEs are much more likely to report feeling depressed for 2 or more weeks in a year, over 2 times more likely to develop heart disease. So I work at St. Luke's Health System. So we get to see the downstream effect of not mitigating upstream and trying to prevent and create resilience. 12 times more likely to attempt suicide. And as you guys know, Idaho is considered one of the suicide belt states, the Intermountain West. We have the 5th highest suicide rate typically in the country. Over 2 times more likely to have a stroke, 2 times more likely to have cancer. I've got some of my, my cancer colleagues on here. They can talk to you all day about what they see. 1.5 times more likely to have diabetes, 7.5 times more likely to be an alcoholic, and almost 4 times more likely to have chronic bronchitis or emphysema. So that should be shocking to us when you see the system of, the system repercussion of stress and toxicity and what it can cause in our bodies long term. And so Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, she's kind of my she's kind of my favorite. I kind of have a little hero worship of this woman because she went into the hardest, toughest place and didn't look at what people were telling her. That's just where these kids grew up. This is just who they are. She said, no, we're going to look more deeply. And so she says, when you look at ACEs, they're actually a stronger predictor of heart disease than any of the traditional risk factors. And yet she was never trained one day in medical school. And by the way, she went to Stanford. So a really great prestigious school. So people with an ACE score of 7 who don't drink, don't smoke, are not diabetic, do not have high cholesterol, still have a 360% greater risk of heart disease. So y'all, we got to do something collectively. So what does this look like in Idaho? These likely will not surprise you, but this shows low income, separation, divorce, death of a parent, a family member incarcerated, widowed, or witnessed domestic violence, neighborhood violence, household mental illness, substance abuse within the household, and then bigotry or racism. So Idaho is the blue bar, and the greater US is the red. So this, again, probably will not surprise any of you. We have more children than the US living in poverty. We have twice as many children living in households with mental illness. And again, more children living in households where substance abuse is used, and I would say oftentimes as a coping mechanism. Because remember that often many of these adults have been those children. And then I think we talked too about education. You know, why does that kid go from 0 to 60 like that? You know, and the experts say they don't. They're pre-programmed at 50. So they go from 50 to 60 like that because they flip their lid. And so look at, I think this slide is startling to me. Look at how many of our kids are really looking at the impact of ACEs rather than purely a learning disability, ADHD, repetitive grades, bullying others, developmental delay, behavior problems, anxiety. How many of you have seen a significant rise in anxiety in our kids? And let's be honest, a significant rise in anxiety in us as adults. So again, we really have to start looking at the real attributes that ACEs impact broadly and largely across our communities. And then you'll hear oftentimes, you know, we have a school to prison pipeline. And honestly, that's too often true. And we've heard from other states where they actually look at third grade reading scores to predict prison population size. So think about that. By third grade, how old are those kids? 7, 8 years old? They're looking at their keystone outcomes around reading to look at what size prison should we build. That should baffle all of us, and I will tell you fundamentally, I can't sit with that. We should not ever agree to give up on our kids at 8. So in a study of almost 65,000 juvenile offenders in Florida, those offenders were 13 times less likely to report 0 ACEs. They are 4 times more likely to report 4 or more ACEs. So again, these are juvenile offenders. And the ACEs not only increased the chances of involvement in the juvenile justice system, but they really increase the risk of reoffense and recidivism. So what does that look like in Idaho? This is a table of ACEs among Idaho youth in juvenile detention versus the general population. So the middle bar are those who are involved in justice. And then the percent on the right are those who are non-justice involved youth. So look at 4 ACEs and then 5 or more. So in the general population of adolescents, 4.1 have experienced 4 or more ACEs, which that's still pretty high, and 4.7, 5 or more. But look at that then in the justice involved sample. 12.7 of those youth have experienced 4 ACEs, and then 38% have experienced 5 or more. So again, what's driving some of the decisions that are being made? Let's look back at what's happening to them and how early those impacts are starting to predict where some of these kids are going to end up, unfortunately. And then ACEs in juvenile justice, the Idaho Department of Justice reports an average ACE score of 4.2. Of those, 62% had 4 or greater, and 16% had over 7. So remember, that's looking at that traditional 10. That's a little bit shocking. And then 25 years ago, they started to have a little bit of a paradigm shift to balanced and restorative justice, which many of you are probably familiar with. And hopefully in a little bit, we can have Judge Jack Varon opine on this for us a little bit. And really, how do we start to talk about restorative and resilience-based justice, where we know that what's happening to kids early and often is starting to really create the trajectory for them. And so really those real world consequences have to really start to be couched in how do we start to heal, create communities that are resilient, families that are resilient, and children who can thrive in the face of adversity. So really changing and framing the conversation from what's wrong with you to what happened to you. People will tend to show up a little bit differently if it doesn't sound judgmental from the beginning. If you ask a 7-year-old who's acting out, what happened to you this morning? You know, what's got you kind of anxious? Maybe they didn't eat. Maybe they didn't have a place to sleep the night before. So really starting to prime our kids to look at help-seeking behaviors by changing the conversation to more trauma-informed. The mean ACE score by Juvenile Detention Center. I live in Nampa, so we are the red in Canyon County. The average for kids in our Juvenile Detention Center are 4.21 ACEs. And the lowest is 3.28 in Fremont. So again, all of these kids have faced pretty significant adversity in their life. So what do we do as communities to say, again, we get much further upstream so that we start to have kids who are not moving through that prison pipeline? And ACEs in juvenile detention, juveniles in our Idaho Justice Department have had a much higher level of trauma exposure, and you can see that by the data that we've shared. And that's cross-referenced against similarly aged juveniles in the general population across the U.S. And most of these juveniles have not just been exposed to one form of trauma. There have been multiple. So look at the little boy in the video. He had multiple, and he was probably in that video, I'm guessing, 7 years old, 7, 8 years old. And he'd already been exposed to substance use disorders, violence in the home, taking care of his mom. So you don't know, had dad been removed from the home and incarcerated? Look at, you can just start to anticipate what he had already experienced at such a young age. So we really need to start reducing the trauma exposure in juveniles and preventing and reducing the mental health and substance abuse problems by getting as far upstream. So in healthcare, we talk about that a lot. We talk about if we get upstream and start to mitigate and prevent disease states, then downstream we'll see healthier outcomes for people. But when you talk about communities where trauma is relatively pervasive and inequities are clearly pervasive, how do we collectively get upstream? And so that's the questions that we started asking ourselves when we started looking at the Idaho Resilience Project. There's a lot that can be done about ACEs. They absolutely do not have to be predictive. So remember that. They do not have to be predictive, and they shouldn't be. No child, in my opinion, is broken. We break kids sometimes with what we allow to happen to them. And I was heartbroken last night to see that a 9-year-old child died. And it looks like potentially at the hands of his parents. And what is happening to prevent that? Where are those community conversations and connections around hope happening? So these are the CDC's recommendations on how you can help prevent and mitigate adverse childhood experiences. And many of them make just common sense, but they're not as easy to sometimes lift as a community or as a state. So that's why we link arms with great intention and say, why not? So parent support programs for teens and teen pregnancy prevention programs. Home visiting has really shown to be really, really effective. When somebody has sight lines onto a parent who might be struggling and saying, it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to ask. It's not okay to not ask for help. We're here to support you. Help them learn to do the things they don't know how to do. I inherently believe most people are doing the best they know how. And if this little boy, if this is the environment he grew up in, what is it going to take for him to not parent the same way that was modeled to him? Mental illness and substance abuse treatment. We're way too under-resourced in both. And we know that for a fact. So, you know, it's not that easy to hire child psychiatrists, and it's also not always the right answer. How do we, again, get so far upstream that only those kids most in crisis and highest need that level of intervention? Where are the community supports that are catching these kids before they get to that state, or their parents with supports around the families? High quality childcare. When people are afraid to lose their job, if they don't have appropriate childcare, what happens to those kids? Do we often see that translate potentially into neglect and abuse because they may be left with somebody who they shouldn't be left with, but people don't always have a choice. And we are, again, you know, one of the only states in the union that doesn't, at a statewide level, provide funding support for pre-K. Sufficient economic supports for families with lower incomes. Oftentimes at St. Luke's, we see families who will forego care because they can't get their child to a clinic during regular hours, or they'll lose their job. So children who are not seen for a very long time. And there are very, very preventative health or illnesses, chronic illnesses, or health disparities that could be caught much earlier if we have pathways to and sufficient economic supports for families who are in that lower income status. Then again, the home visiting to pregnant women, getting people socialized to the idea that help is there, support is there. I'm trying to read this chat. As the mom of 15 trauma kids, we found that the public school system's grossly underprepared. Yeah, I find it really interesting what we ask our schools to do. That's been really evident, I think, during COVID. They're supposed to bring in all the supports. And I think, again, as we continue through this today, think about where are the supports in the community where we link arms and we wrap those supports around our schools. And we don't lay that all at the feet of our school districts to lift. I think, what are we, 50th out of 51 in lowest per pupil spending in the country? Puts a lot of pressure on our schools. And thank goodness for you, I don't know what your first name is, but raising 15 kids. Bravo. Parent training programs. We need stable environments and stable homes for these kids. And oftentimes, again, their parents didn't experience the same. Rainy, hi, thank you. And then intimate partner violence prevention. How are we early and often starting to try to prevent and teach kids what a healthy relationship looks like? When saying, no, this isn't healthy, what does that look like? Preventing and then intervening when needed. And then family-friendly work policies. How do we make sure that people who need time out of work to take care of really important critical health challenges or other things have that time and the ability to miss a little bit of work? So I'm going to pitch back to Shannon, because we heard yesterday and we were so excited to see it in here, the power of positive. You guys heard Dr. Sege talk about that. And so we're going to now say that was the hard, heavy stuff. And now we're going to get into the positive. And Dr. Sege had spoken about the 7 positive childhood experiences. So we want to now really do a deep dive into what the positive looks like. So Shannon, I'm pitching back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jean. And thanks for doing the heavy lift with getting us through that. If I could lean back on my story for you a little bit, what I didn't tell you is that at my lowest, I would say, in my life, so where I grew up, what you don't know, 6 ACEs, just according to what, I saw then. I don't, when I think about the adverse community environments, poverty, discrimination, housing, some of those challenges, I had those in my world as well. I ended up being a teen mom. So at 18, I had my first, and I can recall the moment, I brought her home, and I lived in a motel with my parents and my younger brother, the size of 3 jail cells, tiny motel. And I was a high school dropout. I had no job. I had no car. I was on welfare. I had no idea where I was going to go. What was interesting is that earlier in my year, 5th grade year, I was identified as gifted. And I was told, I'm a child of promise. I'm going to make it. You're going to get out. You're going to go and you're going to conquer the world. And I believed them for a bit in the beginning. So once I got to 6th, 7th grade, I was chugging through. By 8th grade, the burden got to be too much. I would go home and there's drive-bys, there's gunshots, my uncles were incarcerated. They would come in and out. They were drug dealers. They were gangbangers. I was surrounded by the most violent, just settings in some some instances. So how do I believe I would go on? The positive side of that is that I had adults in my life that were outside of my parents that believed in me. And while I couldn't talk, I felt like I couldn't talk with my parents about my feelings, they were dealing with their own baggage, their own generational baggage. And so, but I found some adults to talk to. I felt supported in some instances. Now I did become a burden. We didn't really have community traditions, but I was able to go to other communities and see what their traditions were, whether it was Indian powwows and Asian cultures. My best friend was Japanese and Black. So her mom was Japanese, more Americanized than anything, but took us to see a diverse view of the world. So this little girl comes from the hood and gets to see that there's a whole other world out there. You don't have to live behind iron gates and bars. Wait, there's a whole other world. I felt like I belonged. Once I was identified as gifted, it put into perspective why I excelled versus some of my peers. I had friends. I had a really good support circle where there was a few of us that could get together and talk about real life. Talked about the non-supportive adults, and then feeling safe and protected by an adult at home, no matter how chaotic and crazy and dysfunctional my family was. We had a rule that when you were in this house, you were safe and protected. And when you leave, you were to be the best of friends. So I wanted to walk through those with my experience, because you saw the slide, 92 was my chaos. To sit here before you all those years later, 38 now, I have 4 children. There 2 on the bottom left there are my niece and nephew. I got out of the hood when technically we moved to a motel. We had officially got out of the hood by that time. That was after couch surfing for 2 years. That was after dealing with major traumas, y'all. And I tell you this because I think about my past as my present. My present is someone's future. And I am 90% joy on most days. I have a beautiful, beautiful family and life. I've been with my husband for 23 years. I shouldn't be here talking to you. I should be dead. I should be on drugs. I should be in jail. I should have 3 or 4 baby daddies. I should have, according to the stereotypes and statistics, and even the things that Jean laid out, I beat the odds. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm not exceptional. I'm pretty lazy. I'm pretty common on a lot of things. I think the uncommonality is the resilience, the grit. So I wanted to kick us off in the next section of talking about the behind the scenes of the Resilience Project. You know, what are you all doing? So I just wanted to root in my story a bit there, because people that look like me right now on TV, and let's just keep it real, when you see the Black Lives Matter movement, when you hear the anger and you see the frustration, I have learned most recently watching that and talking to peers, especially because I live in Idaho, 1% of the population is Black. I'm told that, wait a minute, you don't sound like them. You're not angry. You're not even being a victim. Tell me more. How did you do that? And I've been unpacking that. And trying to figure it out myself. But what I can tell you is this: no matter where in life you or our kiddos start, it does not have to be where they finish. Absolutely not. A different finish is always possible. So when we started working and talking about what does hope look like in a collaborative form, how can we take our individual stories, such as mine, such as the little boy in the video, how do we build the hope and resilience in our kiddos, in our communities? So the Resilience Project was born. And it started out with a couple of folks in coffee shops having a conversation. And then we kicked into some planning and said, what can we do? What can we do? And we got together and we just started collectively coming up with where there was synergy and alignment, and we decided to fuse our work and move forward. So the Resilience Project is all about creating a healthy and resilient Idaho. So we focused in 4 areas. We landed on 4 areas. If we can provide education and awareness, if we can focus on prevention and resiliency focused strategies, healing and coping strategies, and overall community support, I feel like we will change we would change the trajectory of what ACEs has done and is doing to our families. So when we talk about building resilience, we started thinking, what do our kiddos need? What do our families need? So the relationships. I was at one of our events, and Dr. Patterson with St. Luke's, I loved it. He said, relationships are like the #1 determinant of health. Relationships. And so where do we provide those? How do we provide those? So we started talking about the social connections, the social capital. It's huge. How do we provide for that in our organizations and as individuals? How do we get smarter about the development phases of adolescence? And as a neuroscience nerd and understanding the brain and the formation of the brain and the reptilian, the limbic, the neocortex, and just when that happens, fully developed brains don't really happen until 25 to 30. 25 to 30. Now that made me feel better, because dealing with teenagers, as some of y'all know, you're like, what is wrong with you? It's not about what's wrong with you. It's about what's happening to you. And when I keep it at a brain level, I'm like, you have no executive functions right now. I will give you grace. How do we create the support in times of need? When folks need help and they want to reach out to someone, what are we going to create with that? What is the cognitive and the social, emotional competence that we can put? What can we put out? What can we help with? What can we give to our providers? What can we give to our families to help them understand? And then how do we reduce those stressors? And particularly when we think about the community environment, when we think about the soil, if you will, of where we put our roots down, that's super important. And so it all comes back to creating a safe, stable, and nurturing environment. And instead of adverse community environments, we asked, how might we create advantageous community environments? And as we started this work, a beautiful thing happened. There are a lot of people across the state that said, yes, let's sign up. Let's build this statewide network of support where we can share resources, where we can share common practices, where we can learn from each other, where we can have a place to anchor and have conversation, so we can come fill our bucket, go back out and do the work. And so what you see here is our network map. And we have partners come in and talk about the resources they have. We have partners sign up. We had over 80 partners almost immediately that just joined us and said, I'm in. And so what you see are these blue nodes are the 4 focus areas. And then you have the organizations and the individuals that are all connected. I mean, isn't it beautiful? It just showcases what we have in existence. And then the results of what they provided, we can see here the regional breakdown. And that makes me excited because at first we thought, oh, please, we hope we get beyond the great state of Ada. And we did, right out of the gate, we did. And then as we look at those focus areas and where most of the energies are being placed, I mean, we were no shortage of excitement. And so we then started understanding that we have this statewide group that's getting together. We share best practices, we talk, we know what our focus areas are. How do we make it sticky? How do we put boots on the ground? And what does that look like? So one of the core pillars of what we focused on was regionalization. Say that 3 times. So what does it look like regionalized? Because if we can bring it down to a region, then we can localize it and we can move this fast and furious. And so To See Kids Succeed was the first regionalized effort that came out of the Resilience Project. Doesn't that just make you smile when you look at those faces and the colors? So To See Kids Succeed, the mission, the vision, the purpose of To See Kids Succeed is to invest in a generation for a generation. And I want to say that again, invest in a generation for a generation. We're talking 30 years of work here, y'all. And we have partners at the table that have anchored down in this and said, yes, what does the long range view look like? So how might we pull all of this together? Yeah. And so Jean, I'll pitch to you to pick up.
Okay. So by way of also introduction, Shannon and I didn't mention that we've known each other for a long time. She's like my soul sister. And we also we are co-fellows in a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Cultural Health Leaders Fellowship Program. And so we were supposed to launch strategic initiatives. So the Idaho Resilience Project was actually my strategic initiative. And then the regionalization of To See Kids Succeed was sort of taking it to my home turf. And so Shannon is my co-conspirator in the very, very best sense of the word. And I will come up with zany and wacky ideas and she'll say, why not? She'll come up with zany and wacky ideas and say, let's swing for the fences. So to have that kind of thought, and I would say even more than that, that belief partner, where you have somebody who believes so much in the power of what you can do together, that you'll look at each other and say, we'd be foolish to not do this. And then the really incredible thing is when you get other people like Judge Barron and other folks on this call who say, we're gonna link hands with you. We don't know where we're gonna go, where this is gonna take us, but let's roll. And so I felt with the Idaho Resilience Project that we really needed somebody's.
So we're not going to go into a main room.
Can someone mute? I don't know who that is, but we can
Laura,
hear you.
you're off mute. Okay, all right, I just muted her. So anyway, Shannon and I were talking with the Idaho Resilience Project group, and one of the things that we talked about was how do we start to regionalize efforts so that you can take it to your own community and see what's possible. Because what happens in Genesee, I know we had somebody in here from Genesee, isn't going to look at the same as what's going to happen in Nampa. So how do you regionalize and lift the community narrative? And with the Idaho Resilience Project, the kite in the branding was used very intentionally. We were really thoughtful about the emotions and the feelings of hope and resilience. And I don't know how many of you, as a child, I hope most of you, tried to fly a kite, and how frustrating it would be when it wouldn't catch the right air, or you couldn't get it up high enough to catch a little wind gust and it would skip across the ground. And what we really landed on was that kite being purposeful and so intentional that when somebody a little taller than you can lift it up over your head and help it catch the right wind, it soars. And so that really was our thought process. And how do you regionalize this work so that every community can lift their own narrative and soar? So the end of November, we launched. And this was part of our panel. We had Luis Granados, who maybe some of you will be in his next session. He's the executive director of Breaking Chains Academy for Development. And he has incredible lived experience. And he's sitting right next to our Canyon County prosecuting attorney and our executive director for elementary education in Nampa, a research professor, Dr. Lindsay Turner, whom some of you may know from Boise State, and Donna Shines from the Mentoring Network. Brilliant work. And then that's our publisher of the Idaho Press. And they all came together and said, why not? So we said, let's be committed to building healthy and resilient communities. We had nothing other than that at that point. And so we started to kind of, Shannon, it's not advancing for me. Oh, there, okay. Thank you. During that time, we asked for commitment themes, and we did the little bubble, you know, what would bubble up in the word cloud? And really what was thematic and raised to the top was advocacy, awareness and education, continued learning, engaging youth, mentorship, and partnership and collaboration. So again, these are not the same folks technically involved in the Idaho Resilience Project, but thematically very much similar narratives rose to the top. So we knew, okay, this could probably resonate in various communities across the state, so let's keep moving forward. I'll see if I can advance now. Nope, because I still can't advance. Shannon's going to, thank you. And so I love this. Our prosecuting attorney, Brian Taylor, is a Star Wars junkie, and he was talking to his young son, and he said, we were talking about rebellions, and he said, I told him rebellions are actually built on hope. Think about that. People don't rebel just to be mean usually. There's something they're hopeful for. He said, so maybe Canyon County's ripe for a rebellion to eliminate adverse childhood experiences. So we all said, we're all in. Next slide, please. Not advancing for you either? Okay. So we looked at some local initiatives early that we could focus on. And one of the things that we realized, we have West Valley Medical Center, St. Luke's, and St. Alphonsus out in the Canyon County area. One of the things we realized is like, we don't really send information home necessarily on setting your children up for success and helping to develop resilience. So collectively, the three organizations got together and agreed on putting this into all new new mom packets. So anything that goes home with the maternity packet, this flyer is included. And also, as you can see, access to care to the care line. So if people are overwhelmed and they need help, they can reach out. So then we also took the 10 ways to create resilience in kids, and we turned them into bookmarks. And then we were able to partner with Sesame Street, and they gave us a series of resilience building books. And so we've been able to distribute those out throughout our community. And again, you know, having these in both English and Spanish is really important in our community, and honoring people's native language. And so we're able to get this out to getting into the hope, the root and the hope of setting our kids up for success, never believing that these kids won't be successful, but sowing so much into them that they say, how could I not be successful? Next slide, Shannon, thanks. So now we're gonna play a quick vignette. This is we are doing a documentary called the Idaho Resilience Project, Hope Lives Here, with Idaho Public Television. And of course, COVID really put a pause on our production capability. So we started kind of thinking, well, what do we do then instead to capture resilience in this really unusual, unprecedented time where we're all sharing this trauma? What's happening in organizations and with folks around our community where they're saying, COVID's hard, but I have hope, I have resilience, and here's what it looks like in my life. So I'm gonna ask Shannon to play. Thanks.
Breaking Chains is an organization that works with at-risk youth to give them tools and resources that they need in order to deter them from criminal/gang activities and also help them successfully transition into adulthood. The way we're dealing with this kind of pandemic and everything going on at this time is trying to keep constant communication with them as far as making sure they have everything they need during these strange times as far as health, just to make sure that they can access resources in the community to help them get through these crazy times that we're going through. My advice for young people who are watching this would be to just utilize this time in a healthy and productive manner. Try to use this time to educate yourself, read some books, join some webinars, keep that social interaction, whether it be through FaceTime or via Zoom, and just stay healthy, stay active, and use this time in a healthy manner, stay positive and optimistic, and we'll get through these times.
I want to make it to a better place where people smile and have a happy life.
Thanks, Shannon. So again, that's Luis and the Breaking Chains Academy. And again, he has incredible lived experience. His story is powerful and impactful, and he will be up as one of the next sessions. So I hope you're able to join. But the belief that he sows into these kids who are already justice involved, he says, you know, I give them third, fourth, fifth chances, because if somebody would have given up on him after the first or second chance, he'd still be in prison today. So the power of hope, the power of belief, and the power of never giving up on somebody when there is a chance to help mitigate some of what has happened to them versus looking at it again as what's wrong with them. So one of the things we're really excited about this time, clearly with COVID, has been unusual and heavy. The end of this month, we are going to do a 2C Kids Week. And so what you're seeing at the top is a hope mural. We have permission to paint this mural on Rolling H Cycles in downtown Nampa. It will also be painted somewhere in Caldwell, likely somewhere in a Valley View School District building, and then also out in Notice. So anybody in Canyon County can take this, Middleton, we don't care, and show that hope lives here. And if you can see, I know it's a little bit hard to see, but the bottom is a heart, and there's a little caricature of a child's face, and then the hands are holding the heart. And so we really want to focus and champion that hope lives here. And so we can also see it as a little selfie spot. Then we're also going to do hope notes. And so really, how do we encourage people? You know, if you want to pass a hope note to somebody and say, you know, you make the world a better place. What you're doing is literally, we've got people in the chat, you're literally saving the lives of these children who otherwise, who knows what the odds would have stacked against them. But for your belief in these children and saying, I won't give up on you, you have healthy, well-functioning children now. And then a heart walk. We're going to give little bags of chalk to kids, and they can take a sidewalk square, so there's appropriate social distancing and all of that. And they can draw art, and then people will come down into the downtown corridors and walk around and see you matter, you know, I love you, whatever these kids want to draw and state around what gives them hope, purpose, and resilience. And then we've got some kids from C of I who are going to work with kids across our whole county to do a youth-led hope discussion, a Socratic discussion around hope and what a resilient community looks like through the youth lens. And then when we're able to convene again, we're going to get our larger group back together and have these youth present to the adults on what hope and resilience looks like through their community, through their lens in their community. So I think this is going to be a really powerful discussion that we get to have led by these kids. And again, the youth need to be leading the change. We try to figure out ways that we can elevate that at any time, because they're going to inherit this. And so what does it look like for them? And what does this next generation want to sow into their community to build healthy, resilient communities? So I'm going to pitch it back to Shannon now. And she is going to ask you some questions.
Thanks, Jean. Thanks so much. I think we have about 10 minutes left. But I want you to think about what hope looks like in your community. And that's going to be extremely important, right? So when we think about 2020, we're not done yet, y'all. It's September. So we still have a little over 3 months to go. And we're going to have to norm around new holidays. So what will Halloween look like? What will Thanksgiving and Christmas look like? You know, the traditional travels might be a challenge. We will have official flu season with COVID-19, you know, right there. We don't know what to expect. We have a presidential election. Either way, 49% of people probably will be pissed off. So the challenges will continue, and it's going to be important more now probably than ever to continue to find hope and optimism. And the word that I came across recently that I love, prosperity, right? We typically think of prosperity as wealth. Prosperity, when you look at the etymology of prosper, it means to go forward with hope. To go forward with hope. And so as you think about what hope looks like in your community, we really want you to root and anchor in that for yourself first, mask first, your family, right? What you can bring to your profession, what you can bring to others in your community, because it starts with you. So one of the things Jean mentioned is hope notes, and we've created a digital version of this. So if you are interested, you can go to the resilienceproject.org or idahoresilienceproject.org to see Kids Succeed.org, and there will be a hope section. You click on that and you can leave a hope note. It's digital and it'll be there for others to see. And if you are interested in having hope notes for your community, please just ping us and let us know. We can get you some digital files so that hope notes can be distributed in your community. And in addition, you know, as you think about what a collaborative could look like in your community, you know, if you are interested in regionalizing from the Idaho Resilience Project framework, so you don't have to recreate the wheel, we're here for you. And if you want it to be a champion to move this forward, what does that mean for you? And so we're happy and hopeful to help you with that. This is a partnership. And pre-COVID, we were moving forward. We were looking at 2 other regions in addition to Canyon County, and then COVID hit. And one of our regional areas was Blaine County. And if y'all remember in the first days of COVID, they were the hot spot, right? So life kind of stalled out a bit. But now we're norming to the digital world and figuring out what this means. So if your organization, your community is interested in partnering, just reach out and we will provide you with tools and resources and ways to help you figure out what that looks like. And so,
and those are not rhetorical questions, right, though, Shannon? We want them to, we got 5 minutes left, so please come off mute, and Shannon's gonna come back to how are you now, but we want you to engage. We want to hear from you.
Absolutely. So I would just, as we close out and make the last 8 minutes to hear from you, how are you now? And so we go back to the beginning, right? How were you? What do you want to anchor in and feel? And how are you now? It's going to be really important for you to think through, and hopefully it's hopeful. So we would love to hear from you. Your thoughts, your comments, whoever would like to come off mute, utilize chat. How can we help?
This is Barbara Kingen from North Idaho. Is there someone in Kootenai County that's already doing this?
No, you know, we've worked a bit with Keith Orchard, and I know you guys have the authors of the Resilient Learner up there, but I don't know that there's anything that we've heard that's really formalized. And so we're hoping to spark some localized movements. And I'll tell you, to see kids succeed didn't cost much money.
Yeah,
It
and
really
I'm not really concerned about the money. And I know Keith, I've reached out to him. We're starting a Strengthening Families program up here. And so we're working, what I do is I work with homeless families. Okay. And so in Coeur d'Alene, last year there was 384 identified in the Coeur d'Alene School District homeless families. And so, and I'm a foster parent. And so I know that the way that we get these families moving in the right direction is by mentoring them and coming alongside of them. And I have a ACEs score of 10, and I grew up here. I grew up in Coeur d'Alene. And so understanding, you know, ACEs was very freeing for me to understand, but I very much about how do we help the next generation? How do we, and so I would love to be able to partner with you as far as, I've already reached out to Keith. I am very connected with lots of people in Idaho, but I want to move forward. I'm tired of talking about it.
Yeah. Amen. And so what I was meaning by it doesn't cost a lot. We'll give you anything we have. And then we're also trying to come up with the capability to do some little micro grants for local collaboratives. So please touch base with us, Barbara, and bless you for all the incredible work you're doing. Touch base with us offline and we'll get you everything we have. And then, you know, any resources that we can share. And then again, Shannon and I are trying to gather some micro grant opportunities right now to give you just a little bit of seed money to kick off your local collaborative. So please reach out again, and then we'll monitor the chat. And Adrian, is there any way that you could put your email address in the chat? So that I'm seeing a lot of people requesting the Hope Notes. Could you put your email address in there so folks could contact you?
Sure thing.
Thank you. Shannon, back to you.
Yeah, any other comments or questions or anything? We have 5 minutes.
This is Judge Varon, and I would like to say that this is an amazing opportunity that everybody has just viewed here. Shannon and Jean and everybody that's been involved with this are awesome. When I first got involved, I was in the coffee shop talking with Roger and several others, and Jean showed up, and we ended up having a big organizational meeting, and everybody asked why you want to do this, and my response as a juvenile court judge is I want to do away with juvenile court. And the only way you do that is to move it up front. Be an upstreamist, as somebody said here. So I sure appreciate the opportunity, and I can guarantee you this is real.
And Judge Varon has been so foundational for this work. And something he said struck with me that day. And he said, I could have predicted for you who I'd see in my court. He said, I could have put their pictures on the wall, knowing from, you know, the family members I'd seen, I could have predicted I'd see their kids. And he said, I won't do this anymore. He said, what are we going to do? Let's stop talking, Barbara, and let's do something. And so I had the privilege to co-present with Judge Varon and some others to one of the legislative committees last year, and they said, how do we not know about this? And so we said, well, we don't know. And they said, it's your job to make sure everybody knows about this. And so what we need from you all is to build that chorus of hope activists. We have so many extremists, so let's be extremists of hope. And let's go out and do extreme work in building hope and resilient kids who thrive in resilient and healthy communities, strong families, strong communities, strong connections around resources, and arbiters of hope in a way that we will not back down. When somebody says, aren't you tired? No, there's more to do. And Judge Varon has linked arms with us and said, where are we going next? Let's head out. And he'll come to Canyon County and speak to some of our prosecutors and judges. And we need champions. We just need you to get involved and say, I'm willing to take a risk, and your community will take a risk with you. We have not found any shortage of champions. And so let us know where we can lean in and help you. And again, I couldn't be more grateful to my co-conspirator and soul sister in Shannon McGuire. I haven't met somebody who makes me feel more inspired, and somebody who refuses to let her past predict her future or predict what happens to her kids. But more importantly, even than that, is what she sows back into our kids and our communities. She doesn't just keep it homegrown. She's an arbiter of hope all across our state. And Judge Vera and Adrian, many of you, my colleagues at St. Luke's, I think I saw Tiffany and Vicki on here. We're all doing this work together, and we can welcome as many into the fold as possible. So reach out and let us know how we can help, how we can support, and how we create so much hope in Idaho that other states say, how are you doing that? We need to know.
Thank you, Jean. And thank you all for taking time to invest your energy with us for an hour. Please don't hesitate to reach out. And just remember, hope lives here. And we got this. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Jean. Outstanding presentation. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Take care.
Thank you all for attending today.
And just a reminder, please do the evaluation before moving on to your next event. It's linked on the Padlet. I just put it in the chat. Just a quick little digital evaluation. It really helps us here at Idaho Children's Trust Fund.
Yes,
thanks, everybody.
Thanks for that reminder. Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, all. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you, ladies. Sorry about my lousy connection.
So nice to hear your real voice, Richard.
Working now for some reason.
Thank you.
Wouldn't you know?
Yep.